This is a mistake. This is a mistake. So you got to come in and correct it. Like at least Sarah Murdoch did, and at the Oscars, you just got to come in and correct it. David King, welcome to the Monday Means Test.
That's a rough start. Did I get it wrong, or did I get it right?
No, you got it right. So you're wearing heat because you weren't there, whilst all of those who were sitting at the ground
should never be there.
Gave us one of the more bizarre medal votings that could ever have transpired.
Yeah. Well, so when you see the other votes, I had this sick feeling. Have I got this totally wrong here? And I thought, the more I'm sort of sitting there thinking, oh, how's this going to play out? Yeah, you straight away think, oh, someone's in trouble here. I sort of just hope it's not me. But can I give a bit of background on this? Because I'm getting crushed for not being there.
So this is the King's Gambit. I've taken over the King's Gambit. Go on.
Well, the sort of flippant discussion that we watch it off a TV screen couldn't be further from the truth. Like the setup that we've got, that all commentators have got for games that, unfortunately, due to a whole host of reasons, we're calling from the studio, okay? I'm not going to get involved in that. But we can see everything. We can see the whole field.
So you've got multiple television screens with
like a
angles
wall
running.
Yeah, it's like a wall. And I've got the ability to look behind the ball, the ability to look forward to the ball. Wherever your eyes normally go game day, it's the same, except it's on a wall screen, if you like. So to say you're missing things is wrong. You can see whatever you need to see. And I have no problem with that, and then combining that and the feel of the game and seeing player impact. And then we've got the screen which people see at home. So the end product that you see at home is the main screen we all look at, because the old discussion of when you first go into television, your executive producers or the bosses of the television product, if you like, say just call and talk about things that people can see.
Talk to the pictures.
There's no point talking about what's happening behind the ball if people can't see it. So stay with what they can see. So that's the overarching sort of discussion of what we can see game day. And then I think, given that if you're statistically minded like I am, and then I've got a more detailed setup for stats than what the average person has at the game, right? So I'd in fact mount a case that I've got more information than those at the ground, because that's real. Now I don't hear the crowd roar, and I don't really care. Don't get to see maybe who wins the toss from time to time, or anything like that, or who's sitting on the bench, or I can probably look at the computer and work out who's on the bench. So all those sorts of things, to me, it's not really an impact for assessing a game. So I understand why people are put out by us not being there from time to time or regularly at the moment. But I don't get the rationale that we don't see the ground, because that's 100% wrong. Does it impact cricket? It does, but I don't think it impacts footy. I really don't. So that's my lot. A guy kicked 5 and I didn't give him a vote. That's probably the main feedback that I'm getting. But I assessed Rankin's impact greater than anyone on the ground. I gave him 3. I was the only one to give him a vote.
Yes. So Thilthorpe got 1 vote. So you were with 4 others, to not include him in your best 3. You were the only person who went for Rankin.
And Laird.
Which was very odd in real time. So what was it about Rankin that made him... Because he was at home on the couch, flicking between 2 games, incidentally. He was a standout best on ground.
Well, yeah, he had the biggest moments.
The biggest impact. You
could have mounted a case for say 3 or 4 players. But in the end, you always track back what you value. I thought when the game was in the arm wrestle, he was the reason why the Crows scored, and he's the reason why they still had belief. They still had the magic, if you like. Now, Thilthorpe was very good. I thought if Laird wasn't there, Laird had 11 clearances for the day. They got beaten. They got smacked at clearances, the Crows. Smacked by Port. If Laird wasn't having a clearance impact, it would have been an avalanche to one end of the ground. And Port would have found a way to win. They'd have found a way to score. Although Rosie was significant in the first 3 quarters of the game. And let's be honest, halfway through the last quarter, Port Adelaide were in front. So the 30-point margin or 31-point margin wasn't a true reflection of how close this game. This was one of the great games for the year so far. It really was. It had everything. And yeah, in terms of to put a full stop on your voting, happy not to do it again, Jared. It's just not worth. It is actually just not worth.
So
the feedback.
Were you legitimately shocked when Jordan Dawson was called as the medalist?
Well, I saw the votes come through ahead of time, and he was in everyone else's votes, and Rankin wasn't. And I thought, oh, wow. I was actually nervous that I'd got it wrong.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see although we just sat through the game and I knew what I'd seen and I knew that, what the numbers were telling us and what the eyes were saying, I wanted to watch the game again. I actually went home and watched the game again. I can't believe I did that, but I thought I just need to sort of appease myself. Look, in the end, it was a great game of footy, and it's a shame that we're talking about the votes, not what these young men were able to do.
Okay. So it sits a bit with Marissa Tomei won an Oscar for, I think it was My Cousin Vinny, and it's always been thought that the wrong name was read out and wasn't corrected at the time. So it just stands as an open question whether she was really the name in the envelope. Anyway.
You know what will be? I can't wait today to see what the coaches' votes are.
Oh, yeah.
Because do the coaches say, hang on, do we have to endorse what's been read out? Do we have to give Dawson a vote, even though we really don't think he was influential in the game? And what does Thilthorpe get versus Rosie?
Yeah.
What does Laird even get in the votes?
Yeah.
I don't know. So, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and that's why you have so many people vote. And they all saw Dawson. I don't know how they all saw Dawson. So, it's just one of those quirks, isn't it?
It is. It's a glorious quirk in the game. How deep are the problems at the Cats after 3 games in 2023?
No, they're deep, aren't they? Look, sometimes these things, they sneak up on you a little bit. And Geelong just don't lose to the also-rans. They just don't. They just bank these wins, and then they go 50-50 against the teams at the top of the tree, and they find themselves finishing top 4 year on year and fight the fight in September, be great or have a hard loss. I think it starts in the subconscious. I think that it just leaks in. You're absolutely not 100% every time, and as manic as you've been when you didn't have that success. Now, they'll defend this, and Chris is a great orator, and he'll find words to dance around the actual issue. The issue is that they no longer have Selwood there to save them when times are tough, to eyeball a few, to actually do it personally himself, get in and win a few clearances, get the game going, have a big moment, have a big action that shifts the course of a game, that changes momentum. Patrick Dangerfield at the moment can't do it. He had a poor second half. So then the level of responsibility falls on players that aren't there, that aren't ready for that. You can talk about getting Bowes and getting Bruin and all these sorts of players and Henry and all that sort of, but they're not there yet. They're not the finished product. And we're talking about a team that's just won a flag, that they've got all these extra little bits coming in, but the big bits are at the end of their days. Hawkins can't move. He really can't. And we talked about him last week. Does he need a mini preseason? They've decided to just keep playing him. So he'll play and recover for the next few weeks. There's no great improvement coming in the short term for Tom. He may feel better, but there's no great physical improvement on a limited preseason. The last few years are just catching up with a couple of them. And that's okay. They've played a hell of a lot of footy. They've played 25 games a year, every year for 5-6 years. So it's a point where you arrive at a tipping point, I think, and it's not massive. They're marginal things. A percentage point here, a percentage point there. We said last week that Jeremy Cameron is wallpapering over the cracks of Geelong, kicking those goals that are 1 in 3 opportunities, 50-50 opportunities. Yeah, there had to come a point where he'd miss a few easy ones that you'd normally just put in the book, and they'd find themselves under pressure. That's exactly what happened yesterday. And they ran into a pretty good team. The Suns were pretty good yesterday. So I think that everyone's sort of short-selling what they were able to do, but their lack of speed in the midfield, their lack of impact from guys that you probably hope, like Atkins and those sorts of guys, you hope that they would elevate. Guthrie, for some reason, is not the same player at the moment. They look really vulnerable down back. So it's all conspired against them. But you know what? Geelong fans sit back and say, hey, listen, we got the tattoo last year. It doesn't. Are we disappointed? Oh, well, we find ourselves in a different position now, and there's different challenges. They'll still win. They'll have that dead cat bounce through the course of the year. They'll get on a run of 3 or 4 games, and you'll want to fall in love with them again. But deep down, it's not. To me, it's not there, and that's something that you just feel rather than say absolutely here in the numbers or absolutely here in the vision. It's small percentage points everywhere.
And so can't be rekindled?
Well, it's difficult to rekindle that, I think, because it leaks into the subconscious that, you're absolutely doing everything. Everyone will talk about, they're very rarely at the club now. Geelong, what a great setup. They're hardly ever there, because they got this, and this, and this. Well, now I wonder whether you say, well, maybe we need to do it more. Do you need to have to shift? Does things need to shift? Do we need to put more energy into this? Do we need to spend more time together? Do we need to be harder at training? Do we need more man hours? So things will shift, and they'll question every area of the club. Chris is a thorough professional. He doesn't miss anything. But it's not as straightforward as what it was last year. It's not on autopilot anymore. They've had to get their hands back on the wheel with a plane that probably needs more steering than last year.
If they got themselves to 4-4, would it be time to reassess?
I don't think so, because we're talking about gaps.
Yep.
We're talking about the top 2 or 3 teams, and then there's a separation to the next. It's the same every year. And then there's a separation to the next. I don't know which bracket they're in at the moment. 0-3 is a long way back. To even find yourself where at the end of the year, like 6th, 7th, 8th, I don't feel you can win it from there anyway. They'll fight the fight. They're a proud club and they've got proud warriors, but I won't be buying into them, put it that way.
Yesterday at the MCG was high-end stuff. That was the reprise of a qualifying final. Sydney had walloped 2 lesser teams on the way, how they'd go back at the MCG. And Melbourne handled business. They took care of business. Here was Simon Goodwin afterwards.
That was fun. That was a game of footy. It was a genuine game of footy, in front of a great crowd. It was one that was full of momentum swings, great start, and like we expect from Sydney, they challenged back. That's what they do. They're a good footy club. But once again, it was just our ability to respond, very similar to round 1, our ability to respond when momentum was against us and get that back and then go back at the opposition again. That was really pleasing for us. But, that was a cracking game of footy. It's early, but we've been in 2 situations now where teams have come at us in second halves, and we've been able to just stand up as a footy club and just hold the momentum for that period and then find a way to regather ourselves. And I thought once again our leaders were really strong in that space, and I thought a lot of the young kids actually stepped up as well and started to lead our footy club.
Melbourne kicked 21 goals. They won by 50 points. This is high-end PFI material, preliminary final integrity. And a big cheerio to the Van Rooyen people who have been texting for 12 months, as you were right. You must have been rapt to see him play yesterday.
He was good, wasn't he?
Yeah.
From minute 1, his first moment, a big bump, and then he charged forward and set up a goal. And they are set for a big start to the year. I've talked about Melbourne's pre-season for a long time. Most contested, brutal pre-season I've seen in a while. They've come with a point to prove. I think they feel like, even though they finished second on the end of the home and away last year, they just weren't themselves in the back half of the year. And it just petered out into a really average sort of end of year in the final series. They are hungry now. They got that pressure back. When you see that intensity that just puts the opposition under that much heat, they can't handle it. They just puncture, and that's what happened to Sydney. They'd played 2 soft kills walking into this game, and they got ambushed. And Melbourne knew that they were ready to bring something Sydney weren't accustomed to. And then when the game went into contest, they bashed them. This is classic Melbourne. This is who they are. And again, to not back over too much of what we've done the last couple of weeks, I've been waiting to see what Oliver and Petrarca will do without Gawn. Well, I think we can tick that. We know they're stars, but there's a different challenge at Melbourne at the moment. I think that they're embracing the fact that Max is not there. Okay, who's the leader now? Who's going to show the way? And then because the stars perform like that, those lesser ranked players that you've sort of just mentioned, they just do their little bits and pieces. They're not asked to go over and above. They're not asked to be the reason Melbourne win. Just go and do your bit, and we'll be okay. But May was bulletproof down back. Sydney couldn't get through for a fair period of time. And if you're looking for what Melbourne are doing different, they're taking territory. They're going forward fast. They're putting Sydney under pressure immediately once they've won the ball back. And okay, there's going to be a time where you lose the handle on the game, you lose a bit of momentum, and Sydney, like a good side does and did, was they were able to punish for a period of time there through the middle of the game, but it was always in full control for Melbourne, in my opinion, off the back of their stars. They're right up the pointy end this year, Jared. I mean, there's only really two standout teams at the moment, Melbourne and Collingwood, and their assets are different to all others, but there's a brutality about Melbourne again.
And the first day with Grundy, so this is 4 to 6 weeks, although Max was on the track at the captain's run, so it might be sooner than that. That looked like it's going to be fine.
He just gets involved, doesn't he? Like he I don't know, he's a different sort of ruckman.
Yeah,
like,
always was.
Yeah, you see him in the ruck and sometimes you can look really flimsy and you go, oh, yeah, Brady, come on, mate, you know. I know he's missed a lot of footy over the last 18 months, so it's very hard to be critical of him, but then he's just like a tall ruck rover. And you think, oh, gee, that was clever. Oh, he slips a handball through. You go, wow, that was pretty good. So I think they're going to find their way with him and how they can best utilise him. And when Max comes back, it'll just be another another big bonus, another asset that teams can't cover. So they're just going to stack the wins. As we said a couple of weeks ago, I wouldn't be surprised if at the halfway mark they're 10-3 or 11-2 or something like that. Because they've set themselves up for a fast start. And then I think the management in the second half of the year will be different to 2022.
What about the PFI scale for Sydney out of that?
Yeah, he couldn't handle the heat. So that's a real challenge because we've talked about this midfield being a little bit vulnerable to the absolute contest, and they got shown up again. So it hit them in a grand final day. They got spun into orbit in the first 20 minutes of a grand final, never recovered. They got bashed again on the weekend. So there is a chink. So you can dance around it and you can say no, we're fine. We got Mills and Heaney and Goulden's coming along and all this. You can talk yourself as into a bit of a false read on who you are. Right now they're not tough enough. Right, against the very best, so they got a challenge.
Yeah, these are PFI measures. Yeah. Keep in mind, this is right about the top end.
So I've got no idea what they're going to do in terms of their review. But I'd be shocked if John Longmire didn't walk in and say, "Hey guys, this happened to us on the biggest occasion. At some point, we have to make a statement." I don't know what the exact number was, contested possession on the weekend, but they smacked them. What was it? Plus 34, brained them. Plus 34 is a big number. You're not winning against Melbourne if you can't compete in contested footy. So I think that John Longmire walks in and says, when are we going to be plus 34 in contested possession against a Melbourne, a Geelong in a big game, Collingwood? If we can't do that, we can't absorb. We have to defend all day because they're starting with the footy all the time. So that's their issue, and that'll be a little asterisk for us. To track for, we've got 20 weeks to go. There's no hurry to get everything right, but that's an obvious flaw with your biggest challenge third weekend.
And structurally, what do you feel around their forward line when Franklin is there?
There was two bits of play that worried me yesterday. One where Lance was unopposed, ran to 50, and Stephen May was retreating back to the goal square. And Jake Lever was coming up to put a bit of pressure on. And he kicked the goal and he didn't make the distance. And I thought, wow, that's not Lance. And then he had another shot where he was about 50 out and he had to put everything into it and he pulled it so hard, I think it went on the full. And I thought, you know what, now his timing's clearly slightly off. It's like a golfer when they just lose that absolute middle of the club. And I thought, oh, Is this a start? And then it makes me wonder whether they have to look at a different role for him. Does he have to go further up the field? Because his field kicking's still there. He's just reaching for that clearance at the goal mouth there. So now, asterisk for me on Lance. Is he still the pure striker that we know? So maybe he's a half forward flanker now, not a full forward.
Yep, and they've got two young key position players that they've
going
had
well.
A little taste of.
Yeah. They've got to invest in them, don't they?
at the right time. So this is the push-pull, isn't it?
So what's the right time, do you think?
When Franklin's retired.
I don't think you can wait till then.
This year is I think this year is a weekly struggle. Having watched having watched their first 3 games. So how are we doing this? What are we doing? Okay, when he wasn't there, it made sense.
Yeah.
Now, when he is there, how are we going to make it make sense when he is there? Because we want him there. How do we get it to make sense?
So the year that Matthew Richardson went to the wing was as much about giving Jack Riewoldt centre-half forward as it was getting Matthew Richardson to the wing. So you sort of need to find a balance where you're winning twice along the way, because there's no point Lance tipping over and then you've got to start again with your full forward. Okay, now you're full forward. He needs, McDonald will need 30 games in a hurry to then have you ready to compete in the big games. You've got to invest them now so that there's a seamless handover. So that needs to happen, in my opinion, sooner rather than later.
I think that picture of Sydney is going to be real. It's going to be all about trying to measure them at the top end. They're going to wallop all the middling teams. But it's what does the PFI look like? So they'll stay in that category for a good portion of the year. The pressure index is obviously Ken Hinkley. We knew that going in. If Adelaide showed themselves to be ready to run past Port Adelaide in where they are in the scheme of things, how that would look in their town. And that is what happened, is 6 goals at the end was very hard to hide from. So this was Ken Hinkley afterwards.
All right, what's this season about for Ken Hinkley, Jared? It's about showing you can coach, that you're still the man. You can't make Wednesday errors that affect the Saturday performance. You can't have Lockie Jones tagging Nick Dacos and get that 100% wrong to the point where you have to bail on it 25 minutes into the game and the game's over. You can't put your captain to the most dynamic forward 50 stoppage player I've seen and expect to get a result on Isaac Rankin when he just couldn't handle him. They're Wednesday errors. You can't make Wednesday errors as a coach. So he then talks about your ability to defend. So the Crows have kicked 18 goals. When was the last time the Crows kicked 18 goals? The Pies kicked 21 on them last week, but they both did it in different ways. So the Crows did it with ball movement and the Pies did it with contest. So now they're left clutching. Okay, so what are we doing? What are we doing now? Are we coaching to defend ball movement against us, or are we coaching to win contest? Hang on, we've got a couple of spot fires here. So we've got to put 2 fires out now. Their defensive 50 is in intensive care, Jared. They are the worst team in the competition in terms of being able to clamp the opposition once they go inside their forward 50. 18th. This is not the profile of a guy saving his job, Jared. It's not. So I have fears for Ken, because every time we talk about a big occasion, a big game, they become the Dallas Cowboys again. They do. And week 1 was terrific. Was a half of footy. The 3 kids in the midfield went crazy. But when it comes back to system and your identity, your brand, they've failed. So if you're assessing the coach, let's just assess what's working, what's failing. And Wednesday errors, they kill you.
And then there's the ledger, and the ledger plays a big part in this sort of season. We know that long-term coach in the last year of a contract. So they're 1 and 2. They've got Sydney and the Bulldogs in their next 2. They're big early games now, aren't they?
Oh, they're the ones. It's not. Ken can't just beat the also-rans this year. You have to go 50-50 against the best 4 or 5 teams, and then crush the rest. And that gives you a top 4 opportunity. That saves your job, and then you can walk in and say, well, I'm still delivering upon what we've set out at the start of the year. But if you don't do that, if you don't go 50-50, if you're 2-9 like last year, ta-da, as sellers would say.
Yes, that's right. And your open question spins out of that game as well with Adelaide and Isaac Rankin.
All right, who you got, Jared? Who you got, right? So there's about, what do we got? We got Adelaide, Gold Coast, Essendon, North Melbourne, Hawthorn, St Kilda. Throw your club in there if you like. There's a race to become relevant again and get yourself back to a top 4 situation. Who you got in that race? And it won't be necessarily this year or even next, maybe the year after. Who you got in that race? Because I'm warming towards the Adelaide Crows. I think they've got an excellent coach who's got the ball movement and ball movement against covered, and they're getting elite level talent. You know, this guy Isaac Rankin, he's 3rd in the competition for score involvements. Third in the competition. He plays forward pocket, Jared. Only Laird and Pendlebury are in front of him. So just understand that from it. So there's a guy that is not in a high volume disposal / possession area, yet he's maximum damage. He's a unique talent that I was worried that the pressure of going back to a two-team town to get him on the big dollars. But the second part of my question is, can one player change the fortunes of a footy club to the level that we're seeing in Adelaide right now with Rankin? It is quite – it's astonishing what he's doing. He's given the club some swagger, and I think they're going to go bang. They become a destination club pretty quick. This is the second part of the discussion. Being able to lure players back home, come and play with us. We're becoming, the LA Lakers. Rochelle's going to be a star. Saligo's going to be a very, very good player. Thilthorpe's showing some things. Rankin's next level. It's exciting. If you're an Adelaide Crows fan, I know that you're a long way from being the dream, but they are playing some scintillating footy.
So he's the right player at the right time.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that way during the trade period, I must admit. And then you watch it.
With Rankin?
Yeah. I didn't think it was the right use of the dollars, that player. But his impact, like that impact measure, is just undeniable.
I was worried that the Luke Jackson situation of last week would happen to Isaac, and then then you're in trouble. Young man, big dollars, two-team town, all that stuff. But he's lapping it up. Hey, bring the pressure at me. It's great to watch, and I'm thrilled for Matty Nix, who's pushed hard in Adelaide to deliver upon this rebuild. But don't worry about this is coming out of the ground pretty quick. The foundations are set. They just need one or two more midfielders, and away they go.
Yeah, there's appropriate kudos for your David Ferrer when it came to the Brisbane Lions, now rolled into the Dallas Cowboys for Port Adelaide. I'm a huge Port supporter and Dallas fan. And the similarities are scary. Good call, Kiki. That's from Stuart in Darwin.
Here, dissent. So
all clear behind.
It's not what he said.
And then the dissent.
So no, it wasn't you. It was Steve Niglio.
Out bounce.
So there was a decision not paid. So the ball had gone through, and then he's gone, how is that not a free kick with his arm?
That's
worth another dollar. So that's dissent. That's worth another dollar. It's dissent.
Is it? Shall we have our footy ops meeting in our debate again? A critical moment in the match which amplifies the moment. It's there for everybody to debate. It's not the easiest one to settle in our footy ops room because if we endorse it, we're saying that there were 65 others across the weekend which were missed by umpires. So we have to be a bit careful there. Do we say the umpire's entitled to it? So there's a difference between abuse and dissent. And so we take the umpire at face value here. If it's abuse, it's just straight out. No arguments. But the umpire was very specific around dissent rather than abuse. So we have to remove abuse from it. If Cornelio's sworn at him, then it goes in a different direction, but we're not there. So on face value, that's not for us to debate. How do you wriggle your way out of this one in our footy ops meeting?
I was on the other side of the camp 2 weeks ago with the St Kilda two guys pointed at the scoreboard.
Centre of attention.
One was a 50. First one was a 50. The next one was
full
the
on
captain,
for everyone to see.
The captain saying, "Oh, have a look at it." He didn't even mark it. 50 metres. And I said, we've got to have a higher tolerance. We've just got to relax a little bit. Not everything has to have the ultimate outcome. Everything, just temper it a fraction. Like, the umpires have still got to be a little bit pliable. Just a little, just read the room a little bit. It's a bloody big industry, this. Wins and losses are hard to come by. I mean, Carlton win that game off the back of that free kick, Jared. That's a big price to pay for a guy putting his hands out saying, "Oh, pay the free kick, come on." You were on the other side of the coin 2 weeks ago. Have you flipped?
No, but I think this is way too far. So I think and this is the trick in their meeting today, is you don't want to validate dissent. You don't want to encourage dissent, but you have to set your water level somewhere. So this doesn't meet it for me. It does meet it when full screen together, player is absolutely squabbling with umpire, and the players do know on the pointing to the scoreboard and that, or they're supposed to know. Okay, so shelve that. This is not it. Whatever Cornelio did is not front and square. So there's a visual element to it because it's around the image of the game and respect for umpires. It doesn't meet that. I'm surprised. So that umpire's logic, he would have had to have applied that right through the day. Every moment. So either there wasn't a single moment of dissent that had happened, or it just triggered with him there. It was
crazy,
no good.
It's
no good. You don't want to encourage the players. Yes, it is.
Jared.
It is. You don't want to encourage the players to blue with the umpires.
No one.
But,
how do we?
How do you? This is a tricky one as to how to be publicly accountable to it.
Just give them a level of expression.
Yes.
Like give them the ability to say, "Oh, you're kidding."
Come on, that's a free kick.
Like you're kidding is not dissent, and putting your arms out going, "Oh, you can't be serious." That's not dissent. It's not. If they get personal with the umpire, I've got no problem. But we're not there. I don't really think we've been there for 24 months, and all of a sudden this become an issue. We've created another drama. This wasn't even in our game 2 years ago, and the AFL said, "Oh, we're going out on we've got a lack of umpires. We're 6,000 umpires short in the lower leagues." Only 6% of umpires left our game because of dissent. 6%, and now we're swinging games on the back of that 6%.
Yeah.
What an absolute balls up.
You have to treat this one as an outlier. And that's why I'm so interested.
That's 2 outliers for me in 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, I don't agree with that.
Yeah,
But
I know you don't. But
the first two breached very specifically the parameters that were put there. So that's on the player.
One of them did.
Can't stand their point of the score, but that's on the player. This one's not on the player. So interesting.
But it's cost the game.
Yeah. That's...
So are we prepared to run that risk that, he may have got it right, he may have got it wrong, but you know what? It's cost the game. Don't worry, it's only the Giants. It's only the Giants.
So that's why I'm interested as to how do they word it? Because if they validate this decision, they are saying there are 65 others on the weekend that should have been paid, and that's where it degenerates into chaos.
What a mess.
So my second order at Footy Ops is turf management. We know how we've come to be here. So to the jury, I first want to replay this little piece of audio from Stuart Fox at the MCG.
Kingy seems to think that we just rock up to Bunnings on a Saturday morning and grab a couple of rolls of turf that the public do, but it's very, very different.
That made me laugh. I'm happy to say that made me laugh driving in on the first Thursday night of the season. But to the jury, could I submit this photo, please, this is at Marvel. This is Jared Berry lifting up a corner of the turf.
$75 a metre, Jared. I can give you a price. Bunnings Maribyrnong today on sale. I suggest that Foxy just gets his facts right before he starts firing bullets everywhere, because
the turf doesn't move at the MCG, but it very much moves at Marvel.
Yeah. So this is the discussion. So funny line, but it lasted 2 weeks.
That is unflattering for an AFL ground.
This is my point, though, Jared. Who ticks this off? Like, we're talking about serious products here. Forget the joviality for a minute. Let's get serious. You lose one player to that turf, and if it's a star factor player, the year you've built for to win a flag is over. If Lachie Neale does his knee on that surface, their year's over. So I think we've got to get better than this. And it's too easy to defend things and hope nothing happens. But let's chat about it seriously. I get frustrated by these. It happens every year. It'll happen again next year.
It's guaranteed to happen next year.
So let's see if Foxy says the same thing next year.
It was watching the running repairs at halftime on Thursday night was really interesting.
How
there
technical?
Are patches of turf that are causing issues at Marvel.
What about we got the
just one
the
either.
Clegg meter, the stimp meter, all those sort of meters, Jared, and then the way we fixed it? How did we fix it?
It looked to me like they were putting pegs in from a tent.
He was just banging his fist into the dirt.
The curiosity, Fremantle. They got the biggest assist you could have ever imagined on the injury front for West Coast, where I'll just give you the quick update from Ryan Daniels on Channel 7. Shuey Hammy is as minor as it gets, hopefully back in 2 to 3. 2 to 3 is a bit more than minor as it gets. McGovern could be a tendon. Surgery would mean at least 12 weeks out, waiting on scans. Cripps broken ankle, will miss significant time. Witherden is in concussion protocols, so the minimum 12 days. Liam Ryan knee, Campbell Chesser knee, also a chance to miss the D's game. So that was a scourge of injury like you rarely see.
You know what Simo reminded me of on the weekend when he was parading on the bench? He was actually having a chuckle. Our men.
You've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look! It's just a flesh wound.
It's just a flesh wound. I might borrow that
bite your
tonight.
kneecap.
He's on with us on 360.
Well, it was refreshing to see Fremantle play with a bit of dare and a bit of excitement. They turned and played on and rolled through the corridor and expressed themselves a little bit. Only took 80 marks. So to me, this should be the new Fremantle. And I think this is the correction they had to have. Okay, they got an unbelievable assist. With West Coast having so many injuries, I think they got back to under a goal.
It was 2 points with the first goal of the last quarter.
Yeah, 2 points for, about 10 minutes in? 8 minutes in?
And you're just sitting there going, this can't happen, can it? Because this would have monumental ramifications. And then they kicked the last 6, which fitted in with where we got to.
That's where we thought we'd finish. Yeah. But I was starting to think this could be the biggest win in the history of Simpson's coaching outside of finals.
Yeah.
It would have been an unbelievable victory.
It would have been.
And they did a great job to do what they did. But to get back to Fremantle, it was great to see Sarong and Brayshaw have more impact in the game. I've been crying out for them to become impact players, not accumulators. And I think with the more aggressive ball movement pattern, everyone gets their lick of the ice cream. Everyone gets a chance. You know, Fredericks, his speed up and down. You know, Switkowski, his speed was enormous, and the impact on the game was significant. Their forward line will work if they bring the ball in with speed, because it doesn't need someone to stand up and take a pack mark every time it goes in. So they kick 16 goals. They go north of 100 points, and that's where they should be. So I don't understand. You've got a good back 6. Trust them to get the job done. I really hope they take some belief that this is the plan going forward. But let's see them under real pressure. I think they've got the Adelaide Crows in Adelaide this week. That's a big game now. So I'm still yet to find out who Fremantle are, where they are on the pecking order. Are they serious contenders, or are they still tinkering and 2 years away, or are they there? Or I don't think anyone has a great read on them at the moment, but it's a big game this week.
Saturday early game at Adelaide Oval.
Yeah.
Are Carlton confecting close games? When they were behind in the last quarter, I was thinking, because I've got Carlton to bank the next 20 points.
I know.
And I'm thinking, you can't lose like this.
You know what I was cheering for?
Yeah, I know what you were cheering for. Just so Mark's posed the question, where do the Blues really sit? I have concerns. That was the worst game I've ever watched. That's classic Monday morning snap judgment material. A win's a win, but our connection with our forwards is terrible.
Yeah, or is it just the fact you kicked 9 goals 20?
Yeah.
Yeah, 9-20.
That's where I'd start.
Yeah. Mind you, 8 of those are rush. So let's just say 9 goals 12. So the 8 rush is still, you're kicking to the wrong areas, aren't you? So it was a horrible watch. I'm with your texter there. It was a horrible watch. There won't be many replays of that game. Patrick Cripps, 40 disposals, 11 score involvements, 11 clearances. Carlton fans just have to say he's kept us rolling this year. He's been unbelievable. That was just he willed them over the line. And I guess it has me worried. Curnow was very good, did some amazing things, 2 goals 3. He's involved in 11 of Carlton's 29 scores. I just keep going back to, are you there, Harry? Are you there, Harry?
That's a proper throwback.
Old Tommy laugh. But 2 goals for the year for Harry Mackay. He's been targeted 19 times inside the forward 50, and he's 36th ranked in terms of being able to turn that target into a goal. That's not the player they need. They need this man to be a colossus inside the forward 50. Charlie's is doing it, and he needs his right-hand man to come with him. I thought these two as a pairing, did all pre-season together. This is the first time they've been together for 3-4 weeks of footy and ready to roll. Harry needs to lift. Simple as that. If they're going to be the product that we all think they can be this year, the top 4 material, Walsh on the verge of returning. Who else are missing? They're missing Kennedy. He's around the mark. He's not too far away. May even be this week. Then you're really rolling. I'm not sure about Kennedy. I shouldn't have said that, but they need Harry to become the the big beast in the forward 50 and let Charlie just do his thing.
They got that right. I feel like Sam Mitchell got so much right last week. Met the questions head on. So bold at selection. He dropped his bookends from the previous game. He dropped his full forward and his full back. So he made adjustments with his personnel, and then they had a really clear plan to beat North Melbourne. It was when Luke Davies-Uniacke was a late scratching behind the barriers. That's as big a change as you could have got. But kudos to Sam Mitchell and Hawthorn for their whole week, I reckon.
So I called it arrogant. He called it reckless. Their ball use last week against Sydney, 80 points they conceded on turnover, and it didn't come with any real positivity. There was no point going through the corridor because they kicked 4 scores out of their defensive half, so there was no bonus. There was no spoil for what they were doing. So they went back to the drawing board. They took 140 marks. They played wide. They played safe. They played wing line was the widest that they went. And then they only cough up 53 points. So that's a 5-goal improvement. That's around about the AFL average. So that's a 5-goal improvement. It's hard to find a 1 goal, let alone 5. And they had 9 scores coming out of defensive half. So they doubled their productivity there. So it was a win for the coach. It was a really solid day of footy. And then they expose, again, Will Day takes my eye. You know, what he was able to do in terms of going in and becoming a clearance type player. He's a signature they've got to get. I think he's a free. Is he under contract at the end of the year? I think he's one of the signatures that they need from memory. Happy to be proven wrong there, but I think he's a South Australian boy. So if I'd be locking away my South Australians at the moment, Jared. I'm just worried about the Adelaide Crows raiding a few clubs. But well done, Sam Mitchell. Had a really tough week, and like you said, credit to him. He stood front of the pack and said, "No, this is where we're going. I've got my hands on the wheel here. I know what I'm doing." 140 marks. So my only little asterisk on this is don't get caught in betwixt and in between. When you come under pressure in the next few weeks, who are we? What are we doing? Are we seeking that uncontested mark, or are we going through the corridor? Don't get lost in between 2 game plans. But that's I'm not trying to find the negative. It was a great result for the Hawks and Sam.
And they got that wrong as the Brisbane Lions for you.
Oh, the Brisbane Lions, my God. They're in a world of pain, Jared. They're forward 50. So on the way into their forward 50, they're 14th at turning an inside 50 into a score. They got talent everywhere down there. They're loaded for talent. This is not a talent issue. They're 15th in the competition for marking the ball when it first goes in. If the ball hits the deck, they won 3 ground balls in their forward 50 on the weekend. 3. That is a disaster. Only Geelong have won less at ground level than Brisbane. So something's wrong, right? And I broke it down a little bit last night. So that's on the way in, right? On the way out, there's no repeats. There's no pressure. So the opposition are able to take the ball out quite easily, and you only get 49 inside 50s because you don't get the repeats. To get to 60, you have to have the repeat opportunities. So why isn't it working? Well, they've got the 2 tallest smalls in the game. Danaher and Hipwood, they mark like half-forward flankers mark. If you actually have a look at Joe Danaher's marks on the weekend, they are not the mark of a power forward. They are not the contested pack crunching or honouring the lead. They're sifting out sidewards or marking a ball that's half a dirty ball coming in that's going all over the place that the defender hasn't read properly. Eric is lost. Eric doesn't know where he's leading. He never resets as a forward. So what ends up happening is when the ball's coming inside 50, they have to go to the smalls. Now, that doesn't sound disastrous by any stretch. So your talls are out of the play, and your smalls are now your deepest options. There's 4 of your players that can't form a wall in terms of being able to crumb or defend. So you lose your structure, which affects your ability to defend as a team. So they've got all sorts of problems. I don't know where they start, but they need to do something about their 2 pillars up forward because it ain't working. I'm afraid Eric's going to have to pay a price. Do you use him down back and try and upgrade the Dara Joyce or Jack Payne situation, or do you just drop him and say, go back and become a contested animal and take some contested marks at the next level down? But right now, Chris Fagan has the toughest job of any of the top 5 or 6 contending teams. This forward line that's stacked full of talent. This is not a talent issue, Jared. This is a structural issue. So this is coaching or method gone wrong through the preseason, leaking into round 1, 2, and 3.
And it's Collingwood on Thursday night when next we see them. I really like that text from earlier on. Danaher roasted Hipwood last week when he wouldn't kick in the ball, and then Danaher burnt Cameron at the most critical moment on Thursday night, not lobbing the ball down to him for the open goal. So you can't have it both ways. That was a super text at the end of our snap judgments. All right, so we'll bring the means test home with our seedings next. Frantic late adjustments to the seedings. 2 definites, but which order? Have whoever you like after that. All right, 4.
Disappointed in myself that I couldn't find a spot for St Kilda. I'm going with Carlton just on blind faith. I think your 3 and 4 are on blind faith.
Yeah,
they'll get better than what they are at the moment. You?
I'm putting St Kilda at 4.
You put them in
because they're unbeaten. So the seedings are supposed to be a measure of the time. I'm not for a moment. This was the one time they'll appear in the seedings all year, but they made me feel so warm inside on Saturday night with all that happened. I'm putting them in.
You're not taking them seriously.
They're
anymore.
top of the ladder.
You're not taking them seriously anymore.
I'm putting them at 4. They're top of the ladder. They're unbeaten. What more can you do? 3.
I've got Richmond at 3.
Still.
Yeah, I'm a believer.
Yeah.
You can't all of a sudden become a non-believer. Well, I'll get there when I get there. Not today. You?
I got Carlton at 3, where they were last week. They got the first 4 of their 20 points. On to the next one. So 2 and 1, what order? 2?
Oh, there's only one correct order, Jared. I hope you've got it correct. I've got Melbourne at 2. But that was a statement on the weekend. The Quinellas are given.
Yep, it's the exacta. That's the interesting
exactly
part.
You want.
I put Collingwood at 2, back to where they were
2.
after round 1. Yep.
I've
got Melbourne at 1.
How do they lose ground?
No, I was so struck by that yesterday.
You concern me with this every week, the seedings.
I'm happy to move them around.
I'm calling management on this.
If Collingwood whack Brisbane on Thursday night and Melbourne, well, they're going to win by a big number against West Coast because they're not going to have any players left. They'll be back to the COVID days.
Up
just
until
recruiting players in.
Up until 10:55 every week, you're perfect. And then you lose your way the last 3 minutes.
Yeah. I got text last week saying you don't put any adventure into your settings. I just said Carlton are going to win their next 5 in a row and put them at 3.
You had a horse in there, Carlton.
You've got that's right. I feel very hard done by. So just verified for us. Collingwood at 1.
Collingwood clearly 1. Melbourne clearly the next best, and then whoever you like. But I've got Richmond, Carlton.